In this lesson, we'll discuss the Highlights tab of the Advanced Materials Editor. Alright, so let's go ahead and select our object. Let's go to our Material Editor, and inside of our Advanced Material Editor, we're going to go to the Highlights tab. Now, the Highlights tab describes the surface quality of the material, or basically whether it's shiny or it's dull. So we have a few options in here, and we're going to go ahead and discuss each one of these sections, and then we'll just kind of give a brief example of how to use each one. So highlight color gives a uniform color shade to the highlights. So right now we're set to black. Now if we want to change this highlight color, we can go ahead and double click on it, and as we bring this up into our grayscale areas, we'll see some color, and then we can go all the way up to white, and you'll just see white there. So let's hit OK on this, and let's change this over to white, and you'll begin to see some of these highlights popping up on the material here. Now, this color is going to be controlled by the highlight global intensity. So either it's going to be very dull, where it has 0 highlights, or it's going to be very bright, and we have a lot of these highlights here, very, very shiny. All right, now we have the highlight global size. Now, if I take my brightness all the way up to 100%, and then I go to highlight global size, you'll see that I have dull, and then I have shiny. Now, with this global intensity all the way up, even though this is set to dull, it seems to be shiny. Now, what this is actually controlling is how the light is spreading across the material. So if you take a look at a surface of a material or an object, let's say that you have a desk that is just a flat color, it's not very shiny, but light does hit it and it does begin to spread across it, and that's a dull material. Now, if a light is actually bouncing in a direct fashion off of the material, that means that it's very shiny. Okay, so as we take this down, you begin to see that light pattern spreading across the object here. Now, we have anisotropic highlighting here. Now, I went ahead and I figured out exactly how to say that word there. So, anisotropic highlighting. Now, in anisotropic highlighting, you see that we have isotropic and we have anisotropic. Isotropic is uniformity in all orientations, and anisotropic is going to exhibit a different look at a different orientation. So if you take a look at cloth materials and you begin to rotate it, and the light bounces off it in a different direction. So if you're looking at a material at a different angle, it may appear dull. But if you're looking at it straight on, it may appear very shiny. So this is exhibited in like velvet or different types of fabric. So in this case, we have a material that has a little bit of bumpiness, and it has all these different lines going through it. We could benefit from using more anisotropic highlighting here from all of our different angles that we have on this material. So you can kind of see how that's going to change where it's shiny. So you can see here, as we're looking right over the top of it, it's very shiny, but at different angles it appears to be dull. If you take that all the way down, we get a lot of shininess all the way around this. Okay, so that's a basic look at our highlights there. We have one more section to cover, and that's going to be our effects. And we have this variable highlights. Now, if we go ahead and check variable highlights, you'll see that we get a highlight production. Now, this is going to be controlled by our intensity and our size. Now, we know that these are filters, so that means that this is going to be a function. So if we double click on this, you'll see that select a function comes up, and we can choose whatever function we want to use at this point. So let's go ahead and stay with this multi-correct here, and let's adjust the scale of our highlight function 2.5 all the way across to match our material that we've already created. Okay, and then we can come in with these filters, and we can begin to change how these highlights react on this specific object here. And it'll give us a variable type of highlight. So you might be asking, how does this work exactly? What would be the point of using this specific material? Well, we may have instances where we want a material to appear dull in some areas, and then we want it to appear shiny in others. So by using this function, this cracked function, we're going to be creating these variable highlights. So the way this works is the black areas are going to be very dull. Right? Now in white areas, those are going to appear very shiny. So we can adjust that by using this function, and then we can also use these filters. So let's try to modify this filter. And let's actually right click on this and edit filter. So if you'll remember, we can add in key points in here by hitting new key point, or we can adjust what we already have. Now you'll see that the only point that we can adjust is this last point here. You'll see that we can't actually grab one here. So let's select in here and do new key point, and let's just kind of adjust this and see what we get. I'm going to select on a point in here, do new key point, and just adjust this filter. And you can see how that's changing the overall highlights of our material. Right? Let's hit OK on this, and then let's adjust the size. Now remember, the size is going to tell us whether it appears dull or shiny. Okay, this is just the brightness. So you'll remember that this side of our filter is the black areas, and this side of our filter is going to be our white areas. Now what we've done is we've changed the shininess or the highlight over the gray areas by adding 2 points in here. Right? So now let's go to our size, and I'm sorry I keep double clicking on that. Let's right click and go to edit filter, and now we want to change whether it's shiny or it's dull. So the black areas are dull. As you can see on these cracks, there are no highlights on them whatsoever. And our lower areas, which are these pink areas here, those have quite a bit of highlight on them. Right? Now they appear very dull. Now let's change this up. So let's change this, and let's take this down. Actually, this is shiny. Okay. Let's take this down and make those dull. Now we still have highlights there, but you'll see how they're spreading. So if we take this up, that highlight is bouncing a little bit more. Now I could also add a point in here, and I could just take this all the way up like this, and then we'll begin to get a little bit of highlight to spread across our black areas. Now we won't get very much in here because our intensity doesn't allow that to happen. So let's hit OK on this, and let's go to our intensity, and let's right click and edit filter, and let's take this first point over here, and you'll see that we get a little bit more highlight in here. Let's change this filter overall. Let's cancel that, double click on it, and let's change to this 1. Now you'll see that we get highlights along our red cracks here. Let's hit OK. Let's do a preview of this, and you'll see how these highlights are reacting to this material overall. All right, so that's a quick way of working with our highlights, pretty in-depth there for the Advanced Material Editor. And what we're going to do in our next lesson is we're going to begin working with the Transparencies panel of that Advanced Material Editor. So I'll see you then.